podcast. Today's guests are best-selling and prize-winning historical novelist Giles Kristian and award-winning director and actor Philip Stevens. Welcome to the Grimfrost Longhouse. Great to have you here. Actually, the tables have quite literally turned because this is the first time for the pod to have two guests. Must feel pretty good to be special in that way.
It's a great pleasure. Yeah. Thank you so much for having us.
What a thing to be here in real life, having watched it and listened to it and actually be here is very cool.
Amazing. So you flew in, did you fly in today from London or?
We came into Oslo actually.
Oh, you flew to Oslo? Okay.
Yeah. I have family in Oslo. We went out with my cousin, had a meal and some beers and stuff like that, and then got the train over here.
Yeah. So how was the journey?
It was eventful. Yeah, we the train broke down. On the way.
Well, welcome to Sweden.
Yeah. We heard when we got here how reliable the train service is, but it's the same in the UK.
Yeah.
We were in a small village in deepest, darkest Sweden for quite a long time before a minibus came.
At least you were in a village.
Yes.
Sometimes they break down in the middle of nowhere, and people have to sit in the trains for hours.
Yeah, we were next to a shop, which was handy.
The sun was shining. It was really relaxed. Except for we had to then get a minibus that the train company put on for us to take us the rest of the way. So we got a bunch of strangers sitting in a minibus. And I don't know if this is just a Scandinavian thing, but nobody said a word.
It is a very, very Scandinavian thing.
Yeah.
Swedish people, they like to be quiet. They like to be left alone with their thoughts. It's like we don't speak if we don't have to.
Yeah.
It's a very Swedish thing.
We tend not to do uncomfortable silences. It's something we get really freaked out about.
Yeah, but imagine doing this in Finland. That would be like negative decibel you've ever heard about the most quiet room in the world.
Great vacuum.
That's worse.
He's very bad at this. So we spend a lot of time in hotels, and whenever we get in a lift with a bunch of strangers, Phil there's an awkward silence, and then he turns around to everyone in the lift and says, "So you're probably all wondering why I asked you here today." Every time.
That is good. I love that. So you've done a lot of. First of all, is this the first time in Sweden for you guys?
Yeah. Even though I'm half Norwegian, this is my first time in Sweden.
Oh, you're half Norwegian?
Yeah, my mum's Norwegian, yeah.
I see. I'm quarter myself.
Oh, okay.
My grandfather was from Norway. So where in Norway?
Bergen.
Oh, that's a lovely place.
Beautiful.
Rainy.
So rainy.
Yeah.
But I call it atmospheric.
Yeah.
My wife is
you're from Britain.
Do we have to go to Bergen again in the rain? And I said, well, it's atmospheric. It makes me have interesting creative thoughts.
Yeah. Well, welcome to Sweden anyways. It's great to have you here, guys.
Pleasure to be here.
So you've done a lot of Viking stuff, and we'll talk about that later, about your career. But let's start from the beginning. So I wanted to ask you, Giles, because you were in a proper boy band back in the 90s, right?
You found this out.
Yeah, we found that out. So what was that like?
It was absolutely crazy. So the thing is, my father was he was a singer in a rock and roll revival band, and I mean a proper band, rhythm guitar, lead guitar, bass, drums. He was a singer, and so I'd grown up watching him performing on stage in pubs and clubs, and kind of sort of saw the romantic side of somebody being on stage. I was a very shy kid, but watching him on stage, I thought he was the most important person, not just in the room, but in the world, because everyone was watching him.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really super cool. Then I grew up, went to university to read English and creative writing. So I wanted to be a writer ultimately. I'm not academic. University was hard. The first few months of it was hard. And I was painfully shy. I didn't really speak to anyone. And maybe that's the Scandinavian thing as well. I was pretty lonely and shy. And there was an audition, in the newspaper, a national advert asking for singer-songwriters to send in demo tapes. And I'd made some demo tapes with my dad's rock and roll band. So I sent the tapes in to this record company, and they got back in touch with me and said, we're actually holding auditions to put together a pop group. Do you want to come to London for an audition? So I said, yeah, went down on the train. My mum came with me. My dad thought I was wasting my time. I went down to London. There were thousands of young guys in this line to audition. I'd never done an audition before in my life. The BBC were there filming the whole thing, and
That's got to be daunting, though, right?
It was terrifying. My mum took me for a couple of vodkas around the corner because she could see how terrified I was. So
I can imagine.
Then I came back into the room feeling a little bit better.
Of course.
Did the audition, and then they asked me to come back. And several stages later, and I ended up weirdly. I was listening to grunge as Pearl Jam. Yeah. I was Red Hot Chili Peppers, The Cure. Yeah. That was my thing. And then I found myself as a lead singer in a cheesy pop group, which was bizarre.
This was also before the kind of rise of the the re-emergence of the boy band, after the 60s.
Yeah.
So, it wasn't like we're used to it now, where there's, boy bands all over the place.
But that's insane.
Touring with Backstreet Boys and Spice Girls and all that kind of thing.
That's crazy. Did you also have like separate roles in the band? Like, and what was your role in
there was a cute one. I was I don't know if I was the singer. So I think being the lead singer, you kind of feel a little bit like you already do that bit, so you can step back a little bit from the other side of it. So one of the guys was really personable. He was the Mr. PR. He was so good at all the interviews, always smiling, always happy. So he was perfect. So he was the guy that you pushed to the front. Yeah. And then we had the cute one, the young one, and he was just cute and just kind of really talented. But because he was so young, all the ladies loved him. And then and then Richard was the moody one. Yeah, you know what it is. Yeah.
But today you're a best-selling author. You're a prize-winning novelist, and you've written 2 Viking trilogies. How do you take that step? Like it's such a it's a different world.
So after the boy band, I recorded a demo, a sort of 6 or 7 songs. I tried to get a new record deal as a solo artist, managed to get a record deal, toured in Europe for a couple of years as a solo singer. And then the music industry is hard. Mm-hmm. And I was signed for one style of music, and then the record company were telling me to change because a new style of music had come on the scene. They wanted me to do something completely different.
Yeah.
And I just thought, I'm just being pushed around into places I don't want to be. The boy band wasn't me. This sort of music wasn't me. And I thought, you know what I really wanted to do all along was be a writer.
Yeah.
So I went back to that, and I found the freedom of being able to just express myself, just me and my words on screen, and create something myself. And if it was terrible, then that's on me. Yeah. And if it works, that's on me. And it was kind of therapy, I think. It was an antidote to the music industry. Yeah. And I wrote a novel. Yeah, I wrote a novel about the First Crusade. Didn't really know what to do with it, sent it to a few agents, didn't get anywhere. It's 160,000 words, but I learned along the way how not to do it.
Yeah.
So the only way to write is by writing hundreds of thousands of words, which are probably terrible. And then eventually you figure out how to do the thing.
And to find how to find your own voice in writing as well.
Find your own voice, because at the beginning you sort of imitate, and then eventually your own voice comes through. And, so I left the Crusades novel, and being half Norwegian, I'd grown up spending a lot of time in and around the fjords of Norway, imagining people going raiding, and just kind of desperately wishing I could go back in time.
Yeah.
And I went on a bachelor weekend with my brother, and I organized it. And one of the trips we did, which was pretty cultural for a stag weekend, was we went to the ship museum in Oslo.
Oh, wow. But that's pretty cool, though.
Looking at the Oseberg ship and the Rockstead. And I was there with this bunch of guys. And in my mind, I was putting each of the guys on the rowing benches in the ship and thinking, what we're doing now isn't so dissimilar to what these crews were doing
raiding
1,000 years ago. Raiding.
It's true.
I mean, there was slightly less pillaging on our slightly less.
Yeah.
And I thought, hey, why don't I just write a story about a bunch of guys that go raiding? And that's the first novel.
But that's amazing. But you said you studied creative writing. And the reason why I ask this is because my wife is going to watch this for sure. And she actually studies creative writing right now at Oxford. So was that where you went?
No. I, as I say, I was there for a few months, and I didn't really even get to the creative writing side. I was more about the English language and the building blocks of language, which I found pretty tedious, personally.
Well, it is.
Yeah.
I mean, you really have to be nerdy about that stuff, I guess.
I just want to create. That's what turns me on, is creating new things, making something in the world that wasn't there before.
Yeah.
That's what I live for, yeah.
That's crazy. So, Phil, were you a fan of
Giles?
Giles's band?
Do you know what? No, I mean, I was also I was into grunge myself. Yeah, I mean, I think I probably did catch him on Top of the Pops once or so, but I never put the two things together until after we'd been working together for a while, and I found out about his past.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think that when we first started working together, I'd made a Viking short film, so I started off as an actor, and I'd always had a passion for history, and I wanted to make films set in different periods of history. It kind of really inspired me to try and tell those stories of the past, find the people's voices, try and remove the stigma of storytelling from people who look at people in different historical periods as being other in some way, like less connected to us emotionally, to tell some, human stories from
and it's actually interesting that you say that, because it's one thing that I often think about is that like when you look at people who lived 1,000 years ago, it's just a blink.
It's a blink
in the evolution of like mankind. So emotionally and all this stuff, we're the same people.
We loved, we laughed, we felt sadness, we felt elation, we giggled at each other, we joked around. It was all the same. We had the same set of emotions that we've always had.
Yeah.
And I think the best historical storytelling includes that. And so I'd made a short film, a Viking short film, that was about the retaliation to the St. Brice's Day massacre in England, and the Danish Vikings coming over to kind of kick some ass. And I've made that short film. It did really well at film festivals and kind of, got a bit of hype around it. And my wife bought me a book that Christmas, which was a fictional novel called Raven Blood-Eye. And she was like, you've made this Viking movie, you probably like this. And I read it and I was like, this is great. Like, I really, this guy's captured something really kind of the same thing I'm looking for in human characters in history. And at the end of the book was his website. And so I went to his website and there was a contact page. And so I just shot off an email and said, hey man, I've made this short film, loved your book. I'd love to know what you think of it. And he came back and said, this is great. Why don't you come down to my book launch? It's in a couple of weeks in London. We'll have a beer. And we met. We had quite a few beers, and that was kind of
always up for a beer, right?
Yeah, and that was history was made.
We bonded on that.
Yeah, because obviously you're from like different like worlds, and you have different journeys in life. So, is that like did you know right away that this could be like a future partnership?
I think so. It's weird. We clicked very, very quickly, sort of instantaneously. There seemed to be a kinship.
Yeah.
And we have very similar shared views on storytelling and life in general, I think. But to begin with, we just it was about the writing. Giles asked if I could adapt a piece of his writing into a script. We started working on it. As we worked on it, as we went back and forth, I kind of said, look, you're pretty good at this anyway. You shouldn't, I shouldn't be doing it for you. You should be doing it with me. And so we started working alongside each other doing that. And then from that point, we just started developing ideas together, working on those, and kind of writing together.
We made some book trailers. So we thought it'd be cool to try and sell the books with the use of, basically, it was just an excuse for us to make short films. And sort of disguise them as book trailers. So that's what we did.
Get people together, dress them up as Vikings, and, do some combat.
That's great.
Yeah.
So but what makes your partnership work? Like, what makes you guys a good match, would you say?
I think we're not afraid to come up with ideas. Being creative, you can't be shy about putting forward an idea, say something that a character does or how a situation is going to unfold on the page or on the screen, and to have the confidence to suggest something but not be offended, not be hurt when the other person says, yeah, that's okay, but what about if we take it in this direction? And I think for me, having always been, the band was one thing, but then being a novelist, I'm just working on my own day after day after day, year after year, writing these books on my own. And actually, in the end, it got pretty lonely.
Yeah.
So then when I started working with Phil and collaborating on scripts, I just really enjoyed that collaborative process in a way I'd never experienced before.
Yeah, because you tend to also keep the story in your head, and I know, like, as a, like, creatively, when you work on music, and you probably know this as well, like, there's a moment where you go, like, you have this great idea for a song and you keep working on it, and then it becomes this big thing, and you miss the fact that there are a couple of things that you probably should cut out of there, because it just makes this, it kind of ruins the flow of the song or whatever.
Absolutely.
Is that something?
Yeah, we tend not to have any real ego about what we do. It's always the product. So, we're both of us very quickly, if someone says, "Oh, look at this idea, what about this," and then the next person will say, "Well, actually, what if it's this?" And you go, "Oh, that's better. We should go that route." And neither of us have any ego when it comes to what's best for the story. I think also we're quite organic in the development of story. And because some writers that write together, one person will write a section, another person will write another section, and then they go back and they look at each other's sections. And whereas we work online, but we tend to work in real time together. So technology's great now. We can have the same document open that we're both, whatever we put onto the document, adapts in real time for the other person, and we're talking to each other in real time as well. So it's really organic. Everything we do is sort of tiny stepping stones, tweaks, changes. So everything really feels sculpted at every single stage. Yeah. But at the same time, we'll get to the end of a section, and the next day one of us will come up and say, "I've had this idea. Like, what we said yesterday, where this happens. Actually, if we go right back to the beginning and change all these fundamental things, this would be better." And the other person never goes, "Oh, no, that sounds like a lot of work." We always go, if it's better, let's do it.
It's about making the best version of the thing that you can possibly do. Another, Phil's a cinephile. He knows his knowledge of different films is unbelievable. So he has millions of references for things, and how the structure, how the scenes should be put together and stuff. And sort of my writing is my skill, and you put them together, and I feel like the combination just has us covered, and it just works. I feel like we're, against somebody who's writing on their own. I feel like we're a football team with 12 players or something.
But I mean, writing is essentially that, which you both describe. It's writing and rewriting, basically. Yeah. And you have to do it enough until you're satisfied, right?
Well, until you abandon it.
I was going to say, nothing's ever finished, it's just abandoned.
Yeah. Until you go like, all right, I'm done with this now.
Yeah, it's time for the new thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I hear you. But so you share this passion for Vikings on page, stage, and screen. Mm-hmm. So how did your interests in the Vikings and the Viking Age start in the first place?
I think in the UK, I've always felt that we have a sort of stronger connection in some ways than some of the Scandinavian mentality towards Vikings, at least back when we were kids. Obviously, it's changed a bit now. We've got, the Vikings are riding a wave, so to speak.
Yes.
And, long may it continue. But certainly when I was a kid, I was super aware of the Viking invasion I say invasion, it's a controversial term that.
But the Viking influence
of.
But why was that?
Place names. I come from the East Anglia, and we have we have a place called Bury St Edmunds, which is this town. And I remember going there as a kid, and my mum telling me this story about St Edmund and the Vikings coming there, and St Edmund saying, God will protect me. You do what you want to me. And so they filled him full of arrows.
That was his first mistake.
And that was his first mistake. And, some people maybe would have felt sympathy for St Edmund. I, on the other hand, was like, who are these guys? Like, who are these guys that turned up and just went, yeah, well, okay, we'll test that theory. And that was exciting to me as a kid. And, all around the places where we're from, all the place names, our little terms that we have, every town or village nearby.
Yeah, same Derby, Grimsby, all around.
Thorpes, Scunthorpe, Grimsthorpe, all those places. And you think, where does it come from? And we have kind of, obviously, we have our great invasions in the UK, you know, with the Romans and then the Anglo-Saxons and then the Vikings and then the Normans. And, you know, the Anglo-Saxons, the Vikings and the Normans, they have a lot of similarities.
Yeah, they do.
They're pretty much some of the same people.
Well, technically, the Saxons and the people of Scandinavia, they have the same roots.
Roots, exactly. Yeah. And so that heritage is kind of just seeps through sort of every part of the landscape around you, and every museum you go to is full of these stories of these carefree raiders that came and
when you consider that we did have Scandinavian kings, you know, we had Sven Forkbeard and then his son Canute the Great, and England was ruled by Vikings, and the Danelaw, obviously half the country, the north and the east, and down into the Midlands, where we were in the Danelaw, and I think people forget that we were a Viking. Until the Norman invasion, we were culturally very, very Scandinavian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Also, the idea, another huge part of our heritage is Alfred the Great, the structure of kingship.
Yeah.
And Alfred the Great is kind of revered as our first unifying king proper. And, you know, his enemy were the Vikings, and they were the people he could never really get a hold on. And so they're always part of that story growing up.
Mm. Yeah, because I actually read this the other day, and I never really thought about it, actually. We're going to talk a little bit more about Viking ships a little bit later, but I read, I'm currently rereading the Children of Ash and Elm by Neil Price. And one thing that just leapt out of the page for me this time was that, like, Vikings from Denmark could sail to England in about 3 to 4 days.
3 to 4 days, yeah.
So that meant they could go to England, raid for a week, and go back in a fortnight.
Yeah, so it's a weekend holiday.
I mean, when you think about it that way, it's incredible, like how often these raids could actually take place.
And how
why wouldn't you?
Yeah,
why wouldn't you? When you have, you know, you do the first 1, 2, and then the confidence would be through the roof. It's like anything, you know, it seems daunting. You do it, and then you realize it's not actually quite so hard. There's a lot of rich pickings over there.
You could pull off 3 or 4 in a summer.
Yeah.
And actually the PR, what was considered negative PR, because it's only the churchmen that are writing accounts of it and sort of calling these raiders, you know, all the bad names they could possibly think of and how evil and terrible they were. For me, that's great PR for a Viking warband, because, you know, because then when you turn up the next time, people just run away. Yeah. They're not even going to stay around because they've heard how bad you are.
Take what you want.
Hopefully you can go in, take the silver without getting your sword wet. Perfect.
Pretty much, yeah. That's probably
it's not so good for the slaves, but
no, the ones who couldn't run fast, I guess. Yeah, you're right.
Hard to run in.
So you're both creatives within, like, Viking Age history and other historical periods as well. How do you go about your research when it comes to this?
Well, we're so lucky. We live in a time where amazing academics, like you've mentioned, are doing the research for us, and then it's so accessible for us as fiction writers. So for me, the storytelling is what I want to do, but you have to ground it in the research, and it has to feel right. It has to feel. Feeling is everything for me as a fiction writer, because we can't know everything about that period, obviously, or many of the periods of history, but you have to make it, you have to give it a sense of feeling right. I have some colleagues, some friends who they can't write about a battle without actually going and walking the battlefield. I find that, I think it's cool to be able to do that, but sometimes I wonder if that's a little bit of procrastination. So sometimes, you know, you might even jokingly say it's a failure of the imagination, because
I was going to say that, actually. I was going to go like, isn't that like?
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably saying this because I can't. My wife and kids wouldn't let me just go off on research trips all the time, and I would if I could. But also at the same time, you can't really research what it feels like to stand in a shield wall and stick a length of metal into another human being's body. But yet we write about those scenes, and so the whole thing really is imagination, but imagination informed by research.
Yeah.
I think there's a active collection that takes place over time. You know this from the work that you've done studying Vikings. Over time, you start off, and it's in any period of history, you have this daunting kind of vast galaxy of information and then the more you look at the specifics that, especially in storytelling, are related to the one person or place that you're writing or thinking about, all of those bits of information start filtering through to become relevant, and then you learn more about them that way. You know, they stick.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that also helps you paint a much more vivid picture of the use of history. I think both of us are really interested in not trying to get blanket history lessons. It's more about finding out about what's useful to the person. What's the world like to that person? And if they need to do a thing, what do they do? So we research, okay, well, they're walking through a certain type of grass here. What kind of grass would they be walking through, and how would that affect their shoes? Oh, okay, well, what's in the bottom of their shoes? And then, how does that, do they keep their socks dry like that? Or, their bindings and so on. And the more that you search through the information that way, the more the world becomes tangible to you.
Yeah.
The tricky thing is knowing which bits to take out, because when you're researching for a historical novel, you have to learn so much about the subject, and the temptation is to put it all in the story just to show how much you've learned, because you're kind of this information is fresh and new to you, and you sort of put it in the novel, and then with a bit of objectivity, you realize it's this whole section here about wood turning is not actually advancing the story in any way. Even though I've just spent a whole day watching YouTube videos of somebody wood turning, So you take it back out again, and you leave just the flavor in there that just really something that makes the reader feel that they're in good hands. I think that's the thing.
But I think that's an important aspect also, that if you have a specific topic, you have to trust the reader to, like, this sounds interesting, I'll look that up.
Yeah.
You have to trust the reader to do some his or her own research, I guess.
It's a two-way street, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because the reader also trusts you as a historical novelist that you've done your homework. So you have to, this symbiotic relationship of, you can trust me because I'm not just coming up with stuff that's ridiculous. I've done my work, and then hopefully they can be inspired by the novel to go and find out more. That's
It also depends a lot on the medium. The medium, each different medium requires a different type of research.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's definitely different for screen versus,
absolutely. The work that we're doing on the game at the moment, it opens up so many more doors when it comes to those things that a viewer or a gamer in that respect have to engage with. And so the research, you're focusing it in a different way. You're looking for different answers often to try and build a world that is believable in whatever way you need it to be. If it's screen, it's the same thing. When you're writing a script, you need to know that you need to avoid the questions that are going to be answered sometimes. You don't want that moment where someone pauses and goes, oh yeah, what about wood turning? Maybe I should Google that.
Yeah.
So you need to show enough of it to make it believable, but at the same time skirt over it quick enough to keep telling a story efficiently.
You don't want to stop.
No.
And just pause the story. The story is the important thing, obviously. But I mean, going back to the research, and like you said, like a lot of imagination, obviously, and you said like, well, walking on grass and all that stuff. But do you personally do more like practical research? I mean, I heard this story about a World War II bomber excursion. Were you both part of that, or was that?
Yeah, we were. Yeah, I made wrote and directed a short film about a World War II bomber crew from the UK. And I wrote Giles into it. I brought him in to actually act in that one.
Well, I didn't do much act. I was the mid-upper gunner, so I was mainly looking at the sky, just shooting, which was perfect.
But yeah, that's the crossover, and that's the beauty of what we're able to do, is that because we sort of have our feet in lots of different camps. We are passionate about the history telling, but we're passionate about the storytelling and the way that the two fuse together. So quite often we get to do things and go places that we're looking at it with a storyteller's mind, but we're being informed by the things we're seeing. So in that respect, we filmed on a Lancaster bomber. One of only 3 Lancaster bombers out there in the world to fly. This one is being made to fly in the future, hopefully. But we spent a week in the dark with we did green screens. It wasn't flying in the film, sadly.
Yeah.
But we had a whole group of actors in completely authentic uniforms on the plane, with darkness outside the windows for them, and it was so immersive. It's one of the closest exercises, certainly I've been part of, that you could just lose yourself in it and feel that you were there in that time and completely imagine what it would have been like for those guys, or at least as muach.
And you get these poignant insights into. One of the things that really struck me was the only bit of armor on the whole plane, because of the weight. Obviously, the least weight, the better, and the only bit of armor was this iron plate behind the pilot's head. So the only bit that mattered on the plane was the brain of the pilot. Everyone else is in trouble. And just the idea of crawling through inside the fuselage of this bomber. I'm probably bigger than a lot of the World War II pilots, young guys would have been. But with your parachute on and your kit on, you're not in the dark. The plane is rolling. You're not getting out.
Chances are pretty slim.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
But that type of research, I mean, I know, we haven't really walked the battlefields as such, but we have done a lot of kind of living archaeology whilst we've been making the film. So, we create a mead hall and we put a bunch of guys in it, and then we start looking at the logistics of, okay, this is what we know would have happened here, but actually, how would it work? And what's the best way of saying it? And so you're working out the history whilst you're working out the best way of telling the story at the same time. And obviously it's important to us to make sure that we're telling a truthful story and being as accurate as we can be. Obviously, stories have a way of molding themselves out,
living their own lives.
Yeah. Star Wars isn't a documentary. But at the same time, those things then help inform whatever we say next. And those little collections, I mean, we went out to Skudneshaven, didn't we? And rode the
Draken Harald Harfolger. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right. It's the largest Viking ship in the world.
It is, yeah.
I mean, so how was that experience?
That was incredible.
It was amazing. Yeah.
The ship is huge. This thing is, the mast is 24 meters long.
That's crazy.
It's 35 meters in length, 8 meters in the beam.
Yeah.
It's incredible. 2 men to an oar. So that was interesting. You had to be able to coordinate with your fellow rower, and it was we were taking it through, helping with the sea trials and taking up and down the coast. And
so, what did you discover, or learn?
Several things.
Yeah.
One of the things was when we were rowing 2 man to an oar, the speed was only marginally faster than 1 man to an oar. So you can say, well, probably it's more efficient to have 1 crew resting and 1 crew rowing. That's probably more beneficial in the long run.
Yeah,
that was something that was interesting. Everything being covered in the sticky resin to waterproof the ropes and the boards, and everything was kind of sticky. And as a writer, I'm thinking, so when somebody comes ashore, their clothes probably smell of this sweet pine tar. And you probably can tell if somebody's just walked ashore from a ship because you're going to smell it. So it's that sensory research I find really, really, really inspiring.
The landscape as well. We spent a long time walking around Avaldsnes and looking down at a stretch of water that was a toll. The kings of Avaldsnes would charge you to go through it. And we had a lot of discussion about what it would have been like to have been approaching the mentality of thinking there's a threat up there that's going to make me pay to go further. How do I deal with that? Do we go around? Do we avoid it? And those small sort of chinks of attitude, I think, really seep into some of the narrative that we make.
Because you if you take the outside route, you're going into the open sea. But if you come through this channel, it's so much quicker and safer. So the guy who owns that bit of land becomes eventually a king because he he's getting money from everyone he passes through. So for me, I put that straight in one of my novels, God of Vengeance, because it just made so much sense.
Yeah, because on the way here, I finally got a chance to listen to a little story. Was it Brothers in Arms? No.
Oh, Sword Brothers.
Sword Brothers.
Yeah.
Yes, Sword Brothers. Of course. Yeah. Sorry about that. Sword Brothers, and it's a couple of things I thought about now that, as you were talking about. Well, first of all, two men to an oar, and there's one passage where you write that he his underarms were sore for probably gripping the oar too hard.
Oh yes, yeah.
And it's such a minute detail that kind of gives like a true ring to that passage,
right?
And you go like, yeah, that's interesting. But then also you talk about what you also mentioned now, like the smell of the people chasing them at the end, and it's so is that stuff that you deliberately, is that stuff you think of, or is that like experience that you have that you weave into your storytelling?
It's both. I think if you can engage a reader's senses, physical senses, you're instantly connecting them. Because sometimes it can be hard for a modern reader to actually get into the mindset of a raiding Viking. But if you can sort of press those buttons which make them think of smells and the way something feels, and then you're connecting them, and then everything else becomes easier to connect with. So yeah, I love putting little details like that in. Yeah, so Sword Brothers, a short story, which Phil did you listen to Phil narrating it? Yeah, so Phil narrated.
Great, yeah.
Thank you.
So, but as a director and actor, is that something that you can bring to the screen as well? Like, is that as important?
It's stuff that I probably think about it more after, narrating Giles's books. It's a very real mentality for us today. You stand behind someone in a queue, and you're like, wow, I probably should take a shower. Or they smell nice, or whatever it is. And we don't often. It doesn't come to the fore of our minds throughout the day, but it's something that in the moment we consider. You very rarely get that in writing. That they're the beats that really put you in the moment, and that they do. I try to capture small moments of that in filmmaking. It's a lot harder because you're trying to direct the viewer's eye in a different way. You're trying to give them an experience that is affecting rather than considered. So you want them, at every beat, you want them to go, lean in, become part of.
Plus also it's hard to translate someone's thoughts.
Of course, yes. That's always something we struggle with. We've adapted quite a lot of Giles's work into script form, and, we often have conversations about, well, how are we going to do that? Because in the book, they're thinking about it.
Yeah, it's a very difficult thing. It's a danger to becoming like daytime television.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's probably not necessary in the film version, because it's a little thing that you can write. You're inside the protagonist's mind when you're writing the novel, but every little thought is not necessary in the film version. You just don't have the time.
No, of course not. I mean, it's narrating a book is like 30 hours sometimes, and a film is like,
and he knows it's
2 hours. Yeah,
he has to narrate them all.
Yeah. So what challenges are there bringing history into today's world, would you say?
I think personally, I've seen historical fiction getting a hard time recently. There's not so much of it about. It's not selling as well because it's not being represented as much. It's not getting into bookshops as much. And I think that's because it's hard to make historical fiction fit with a lot of today's kind of views. As simple as that is. Like when I write Viking fiction, I'm not trying to rehabilitate Vikings and make them cuddly and nice and polite. That's not what interests me in these stories. So I've got no interest in trying to rewrite history to make it more palatable to everybody. It's what it was. It was in the past, and that's how. But that's not so easy for some people to. They're not into it.
History is in its nature problematic. We are a brutal race, and we've throughout history been a lot more brutal than we are even today, with the things that go badly wrong today and the atrocities that we face day to day. History is, it's shocking and it's painful and it's challenging. Those are the things we shouldn't shy away from when telling a historical story. They're the things, and I believe that in all art as well. I think that art in general should be honest, and it should be, if it's something that challenges you, that's a positive. If it's something you don't like, well, then maybe it's something that you shouldn't explore. But I'd never think that you should censor to the point of misdirection. And I think history is one of those things that it's easy to pick and choose the nice bits. It's easy to pick and choose the things that work for us as a society today, but it's a lot more difficult to show warts and all. This is actually the reality of what those people did and the life that they led.
Would you say that also, like most people today, kind of expect a good versus bad theme?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think there's been a lot of great material that's come out in popular culture recently. Obviously Game of Thrones is a great example of a kind of beacon of a show where massively popular. There weren't very many good guys in it. No. Everyone was a grey, in the grey. And that's great. I think the more storytelling that can come out of that, the better. But, Hollywood studios and TV companies are always looking for a clean-cut thing that works for the mass audience. And I get that. It makes sense. The problem we have is what we try and do is we try and fit ourselves into that world at the same time as not being untrue to what we want to do as storytellers. Yeah. And that can sometimes be tricky.
No one thinks of themselves as the bad guy in the story, do they?
No.
So in the video game, the antagonist, Steiner, the reason he's betraying his Jarl is because he thinks his Jarl's gone soft and they're not going raiding anymore. Yeah. And come on, we used to be raiders. That's what we do. That's what we're about. Fame, glory, and all of that stuff. Whereas his Jarl has become more of he's more about commerce and a more settled lifestyle. And that's not what Steiner signed up for. And that's where the conflict lies. So it's not a bad guy and a good guy. It's just differences of opinion.
Yeah, but so bringing history into life as you do, what would you say is the biggest or the most common misconceptions about Vikings in that case? That people expect, but it's not necessarily accurate.
Well, I think the lack of culture is a major one. The idea that they were cultureless kind of raiders that had no sympathy for anyone and killed and maimed. Yeah, they did, but it was part of a much wider, much deeper rooted evolution as society, and one that was just as much part of the people that they were raiding as it was them. They just were a bit better at it.
That's actually
misconceptions.
Eerily similar to an answer I've given on that question.
Well, really? Well, when I first went with my first novel, Raven Blood Eye, my mum, even, who is Norwegian, said two things. She said, first thing is she said, why don't you write something that people want to read about, for one thing, which and she's Norwegian. And then the second thing she said, when she'd read my first novel, I think she was a little bit horrified by some of the violence in it. And she called me a filthy heathen savage. And we actually got a quote from Bernard Cornwell to put on the cover, which blew my mind. But actually, in hindsight, I think my mum's comment would have been
what a quote.
Better, yeah.
Yeah. But the thing is, the thing about Vikings is, as Phil says, when people used to think of them as brutes, but the beauty in their art, and when they made things, it wasn't just functional. It was, you make something beautiful.
Yeah.
My grandfather was, he was always making stuff. If he made a stool, it wasn't just a functional stool. He embellished it and he made it beautiful. And that's something that the Vikings did so well.
Which is kind of ironic because Scandinavian design these days is very minimalistic.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. So, but how do you balance the expectations then of what people expect and with your historical knowledge?
Well, everybody probably expects something slightly different from the Vikings. The Vikings now enjoy such popularity in culture worldwide, probably, and obviously the TV show has done a lot for that.
Yeah.
People want something slightly different from it, and you can't know what that is. But I feel that some of it is this sort of idea of counterculture. About the Vikings were some of the last in Europe to become Christianized, some of the last to be centralized in terms of centralized power. And that idea of resisting. I think people like that even today. People like the idea that they don't have to follow the rules. They're not bound by Christianity or moralized sort of. And if you die, you go to somewhere even better than this life. Compared to a lot of other religions, there's something pretty appealing about that.
I think Vikings have spent a long time, certainly right the way from the late 1800s. I mean, obviously, opera popularizing the horned helmet and that sort of misconception. They became cartoons of some. No one really knew much about them. They just knew that they had these big ships, and they arrived with the horns and helmet, and they took people and they went off, and and they had big beards.
Yeah.
And for a long time, outside of anyone who was interested in history, that was sort of the textbook Viking kind of image. And thankfully, over time, we've humanized them, and we understand them, and I think we understand them more because of a shift in Christian society. I think that for a long time, the idea of a warring, successful pagan nation that didn't go by the rules of the Christian gods that were being pushed on them was a little bit frightening. And certainly the Victorians in the UK, we whitewashed a lot of history in many different ways. And Vikings was one of them. We wanted to make them this otherworldly, almost kind of boogeyman kind of demonic race that just appeared out of nowhere, and which may have been what they seemed like to farmers,
of course.
but I'm pleased that we've started to really sort of zone in on those things that do humanize them: their craft, their creativity, their lyricism. The obviously the sagas being the greatest case in point, but the beauty of their language, the beauty of their mentality, the humor. That's something that we're always talking about, and something that we try and inject, certainly in Giles's books. It's that they're these guys are funny.
I think the Brits today and the Vikings, they would get along really well because they like dark humor.
Dark humor, it's true. But also, one of the groups that really gets into Giles's work are people in the armed forces. And one of the comments they come back with is that, you really capture the group dynamic of a group of guys going off and doing stuff. They care about each other. They're a brotherhood, but they take the mickey out of each other, and and they laugh and they joke, and they have a cavalier attitude to life and death. And that's supported by what they're doing, by their action. It's supported by their faith system. It's supported by the beauty of their art. It's supported by the poetry. It's all these little ingredients that make them so much more than
the banter is important. As guys, we know that taking the piss out of each other. I don't know if this is the same here, but certainly in the UK, a bunch of friends, that's kind of what you do, and it's really a sign of affection. Yeah. It's a sign that we're friends. We're such good friends that I can insult you.
Yeah, I called my best friend yesterday, and when he picked up the phone, I said, "How you doing, you fat fuck?"
Exactly.
That means you really rate that guy.
Yeah. Marcus, you have to bleep that later.
But that's fantastic, and I think that sometimes when kids are, sometimes now it's called banter is sort of banned from schools and stuff, and of course no one wants bullying. That's a different thing. But banter, a school I know was banter is banned. There's no banter allowed, and thinking this is not a good thing.
No, that's not how humans work.
It's
that's how we build relations.
It's not the
and
way.
Resilience.
Yes,
important things. The ability to actually converse day to day with
and
people.
Also understand that when someone expresses something that might seem offensive, that's not exactly what they mean. So, I totally get that. So, Giles, you've written a lot of historical fiction. You mentioned the Crusader story that you started off with. But can you tell us a little bit more about your Viking trilogies?
Yeah, so the first trilogy was, the first one was called Raven Blood Eye, and it was the archetypal Viking story. Really, I started it in 2004. I got a publishing deal in 2007, and it wasn't published until 2009. So it was a long road just to get to that point of being published.
Yeah.
And it's about a boy who gets taken on a raid by a crew, and he's an outsider in his own village. And when he's taken as a part of this raiding crew, he learns to appreciate what it means to be amongst a fellowship of warriors, and to find your place amongst other people. And I think for me, some of that was coming out of the music business and not having a place and not knowing where I fitted in.
Yeah.
And I think all the way through my career with my books, they have kind of followed events in my life quite closely. If a psychiatrist would have it, would have a great time.
Field day with that.
With it, yeah. With my novels, yeah, for sure, yeah.
So what about your other trilogy then?
Yeah, the other one is all set in Norway. It's called The Rise of Sigurd. And that's, I think with that trilogy, my first Viking books were such good fun to write, but the second trilogy is very, very rich with Norse mythology, and kind of the books sort of almost smell of moss and mead. It's kind of...
They're prequels as well, aren't they? They are prequels to the first trilogy.
Yeah.
Did you feel that you had to expand and put more effort into the research and everything to make it bigger in some way?
Well, it's with the Viking stuff, because it's never felt too much like research, because it's just always been something that I've enjoyed and just been into it forever. So it's not like I have, some of the other novels, the research felt heavier. I did 2 novels set during the English Civil War, and I had to research so much for that, because the places I'm writing about still look the same today. If I talk about a country church in the Civil War novels, it probably still looks the same inside.
Yeah, you can't really change that, because people
exactly, and you get a lot of that sort of thing. But with the Viking novels, it felt just instinctive. It just felt instinctive.
I see. So what's the process of presenting this world and shaping the characters of this world? Because obviously we have the sagas and we have the mythology, but when it comes to ordinary Viking life, there's so much that we don't know. So what are the challenges here?
Well, they are challenges, but they're also the opportunities. The stuff that we don't know is where I have the most fun.
Yeah. Because
then it's just about, well, what's it like being a human being?
Yeah.
And how does it feel to go on a raid? What's going on in your stomach? When you're on board a ship and you're going to a raid and you're trying to be brave, and you can see how worried your friend is over there, and he's thinking that this is his last day, and kind of the way you interact with people, and the stuff we were talking about earlier about being a human being. I
was going to say that goes into what you were saying before, Phil, but the camaraderie as well, and how you, as a group.
Well, it goes to what we were talking about earlier about the connective tissue between periods of history, and the fact that we've been here for such a short period of time.
Exactly.
Because it's the same thing as a group of soldiers waiting on a boat as they approached Omaha Beach, to a group of raiders, to a group of Polynesians coming across the sea in canoes, waiting to. Every single one of them has to go through the mental process of, I'm a warrior. This is what I'm here to do.
Yeah.
But it could be my last day. This could be the last thing I do. And that's such a powerful kind of imprint of humanity. And in us, certainly in today's society, very thankfully, very few of us will ever have to experience that. But at the same time, it's something that has been experienced in human society since the very beginning.
Yeah.
And that's exciting, because that's that part of history, that part of the history storytelling is the part that is universal. It goes back to the emotion. It goes back to the idea that we are the same then as we are, we were the same then as we are now.
Yeah.
And that, I think, it is one of the exciting things for a reader or a listener or a viewer or a gamer to just have a little part of that, to be involved in that in a way so that they can just have a whisper of what that would be like.
Yeah.
It's, and that's adrenalizing. It's exciting.
Yeah. Because you've narrated a bunch of well, I don't know how many books of history narrated.
Yeah, I don't know how many books of his are narrated.
I've done 13.
I think I've narrated all but 2.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So how do you find the voice of each character then? Because like,
well, it was interesting though. When I first did the, I started. In fact, the first ones I did with the God of Vengeance, the Sigurd trilogy, which is the one set in Norway, and I wasn't going to try and do sort of, because it's a crew, it's got a vast cast, you know, there's 60, 70 different main characters that have speaking roles, and it would be very stupid of me to try and do 60 or 70 various Norse accents. I'd run out pretty quick. So what I tried to do is just keep them about tone. So you find a tone for a character. So, you know, some may be a little more gruff, you know, some are lighter and they have, you know, richness in their voice up here. And then quite often I'll go through a book and I'll actually associate people with maybe actors that I know from history. You know, it's maybe a little bit of Richard Burton in there. Or I'll try and find, you know, some Sean Connery or maybe someone a bit more obscure. And yeah, just kind of, I read it again. I mean, I was lucky with Giles's books. You know, I've worked with other authors as well, but with Giles's books, I had been a fan for a while and read them all and worked with him. So I knew he was writing them when I was, you know, working with him. So it was good to say, what's that character like? You know, it's an insight, it's kind of scoop. But yeah, it's tricky. The Raven trilogy was easier because there's a lot more kind of UK characters in, so I felt a bit more comfortable.
You can use your normal speaking voice. Yeah.
I mean,
but do you direct yourself?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. I mean, I try and make the listening experience like watching a film. It's
isn't that difficult though? I mean, I'm just saying, like from a musician's point of view, like we're a band. Amon Amarth is a band, and we tried producing our own records, and after the 5th record, we realized that this is not a good idea.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, you don't do it solely on your own. So when you do an audiobook, and not all audiobook narrators do this. Lots of them do it on their own, and I have great admiration for that because I'm the same. I think if I was purely judging my own, I'd never get anything. I'd never finish it because I'd constantly be going back and doing it again, and you know, tweaking it, and it would take me 6 months to record a book rather than the week or so that it should. But you have a producer who's just keeping the foot on the gas, you know, saying that's fine. I don't need to do it again. It's fine.
We're on a time.
We're on a time with him.
But I love hearing him do the different voices. I love hearing the voices that he ascribes to my characters. And then when we go to the pub, I'll say, "Can you just be Olaf for a bit? Because I just want to hang out with. I want to hang out with Olaf. I don't want Phil. I want Olaf. Give me him." But it also weirdly then informs my writing. So I did a series. I did of an Arthurian trilogy, and Phil plays Merlin, and I love the way he does Merlin.
Oh yeah.
But the way he does Merlin now makes me, in subsequent books, I was writing the dialogue with Phil's voice in mind. Oh. And that changed the way Merlin spoke so that was a very sort of reverse.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I always, you know, certainly the Viking books was a new learning curve for me because I was learning about Viking, you know, different pronunciations from different parts of Scandinavia. I was, you know, different place names, etc. All those things are quite tricky, but certainly the Arthurian trilogy were very difficult.
Do Merlin.
Well, Merlin's great. He's Welsh, and he's
Welsh.
Yeah, he's a gruff character. Is Merlin.
What would you say is Phil's strength as an actor?
Oh my God.
As an actor?
Yeah. Because you were talking about Merlin's voice and his ability to do that.
Well, one of them is actually completely committing to the role in a way that some actors now can be a little bit precious, protecting the voice, protecting the body. He doesn't care about either
There's
of those.
not a lot to protect, to be honest.
You're complete reckless.
I wrote a poem called Hardrada's Saga, and we made a short film of it and called it The Last Viking, about the life of Harald Hardrada. And Phil starred in this short film, and he, just to sort of get into the vibe, he had his Brynja on, and it was heavy, and he's running around the longhouse, like running laps of it, just to get exhausted and just to look the part. And I was worried he was going to have a heart attack.
Well, in the best shape. I mean, let's face it.
But yeah, it's total commitment. There's obviously an instinct there. So he plays in the video game we've made together. He plays a lot of several characters in the video game, and again, I like writing the dialogue for them because I know him so well.
Yeah.
So I kind of think, when he's playing Torsten, what lines shall I give him? And because I know how he's going to sort of deliver it. But yeah, commitment, instinct.
Would you call yourself a method actor then?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not a method actor. I'd like to think I'm pretty transportative. So I'm definitely a character actor. I always had, when I was younger, I played the Romeos and the Hamlets.
Shakespearean.
A lot of Shakespeare. And, and I used to get sort of handsome leading men roles. And then I was no longer quite the handsome leading man I was. And actually that suits me, because back then I struggled with that. I was always far more interested in the broken and interesting morphing characters to actually really kind of, I suppose being a character actor with a bunch of different characters to draw from is really exciting. It's, it's great because one of the great things about the audiobooks is you get to be everybody, and I play the beautiful maidens and I play the
you do this very well.
Thanks. I play the dark and crooked kings. But this is the other thing, the game is great for it. The game, because we've been able to mold, not just for me, for the voice, but we've actually been able to mold the physicalities of these characters from scratch.
Oh, that's awesome.
So if we have someone like Torsten is very much like this, and he's a barrel of a man, and everything he does is kind of clumsy. And that's so lovely to be able to go, right, well, what's this guy going to look like? Or we've got a character who's called Fracky, who's very much like this, and he's up here and a bit made, and you're like, well, okay, what do they wear? What are you going to put them in?
It's interesting when you do that, though. Not only does your voice change, but your face changes. Well, you become
the physicality.
The physicality is important.
But I think that good actors, I saw Clive on your show talking about this. The being able to just stop worrying about yourself is the greatest skill as an actor. It's the thing we all search for. It's the holy grail is to stop being aware of you, get you out the way so you can be the character.
And being a front man
on stage, very similar.
It is
doing the same thing.
It is being you, but not being you at the same time.
Yeah,
it is, because privately, I'm actually kind of a private person. I'm very Scandinavian. I like to, not take too much place.
But when you're on stage, you're a god.
That's my element. But it's I totally get it.
Yeah, it's exciting. The thing about performance is that for me, I think when I was a kid, I was an only kid. I used to watch a lot of movies. I lived in a small rural place that, we didn't get out of a great deal. So the best thing for me was the video store around the corner where I could get films. And I was always really fascinated by these people telling stories on screen. It goes back to storytelling. Yeah. And to be part of that storytelling, a vessel, if you like, it sounds grand and it's a bit cheesy, but if you have the opportunity to go to a different place entirely and be someone completely different for a short space of time, it's great fun.
It is. But people don't realize how hard it is, because I've always been kind of self-conscious. So for me, acting is not something on stage. It's fine because, like you say, I'm playing a role that I can. Well, I could do it.
Yeah.
But being other people and sort of just not being conscious at all, and I think people don't realize how hard that is. So some people in the game, some people want to have a role in the game. They go, oh, can I have a few lines in the game? And they come on set. And they're in their motion capture suit under the lights, and then they soon realize how hard it is.
It's one of the worst things. Like when we talked a bit earlier about the movie I was in, Norseman, a Viking saga, and I had 2 lines for that movie, and I was like, all right, I knew the lines by heart. I knew them. I knew exactly what I was going to say. So I decided, before it was the big day, I need to practice them, how to say them. So I recorded myself saying them. And it sounded, that was
the first mistake.
It was just terrible. It was so bad. So I talked to actually James Norton, who you know, who was playing my brother Volley in the movie. I talked to him about it because we were kind of working our characters together a little bit, and he said, "Well, you shouldn't really do that, but just throw it out, you know." And you gave me some advice, and there was this one thing where I'm supposed to like up there, and then there's nothing coming after, and I was like, but just say, add something like up there, but that's madness. And all right, now okay, that came out natural. So then we had the table read, where everybody's reading their lines, and all of a sudden you find yourself reacting to what the other person said, and all of a sudden there it was.
The moment. It happens in the moment, absolutely.
And then I realized, like, wow, this is difficult. This is a hard job.
Because you overthink it if you're not used to it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to, as I was saying, it's about putting your mind in a position where you're not getting in the way in that way. And it's human nature. It's everything we're built to do is to not go, I'm going to put myself completely on the line and encourage everyone to watch me. We don't do that naturally.
No.
I mean, some people do, but not many of us do.
Yeah. Usually if somebody does that in real life, we call them narcissists.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's true. So we talked about your strengths. Now, what are Giles' strengths?
And I was nice. I was nice, right?
But what do you think his as a writer and a novelist? What is his strength?
We've covered the sort of the mentality behind it, but the thing for me that Giles does better than anyone that I've ever read, and one of the privileges of working with him, is his ability to give poetry to the simplest of tasks, the most what we would class as mundane thing, and make them feel beauty, to instill them with something that's magical. The craftsmanship that Giles has as a writer is a joy to deliver, certainly as an actor. But sometimes I find myself reading passages of Giles's books and just stopping, like in the middle of an audiobook recording, do a line and just going, and often I'd just look at the producer and go, jeez, come on. I mean, that's really good, isn't it?
Do you have any, like, a favorite passage that you...
He's very good at kennings. Like, kennings are the thing. I mean, I'm trying to think of something from The Last Viking, but something along the lines of, we rolled along that ragged coast like thunder.
Yeah,
it's just good. Beautiful things. Or, like thunder, the shield walls clashed, hungry blades biting again and again. Forward, forward, our desperate cries. On, Christ's men, crossmen, king's men. And ravens croaked in the darkening skies. It's like, it's so rich.
Yeah, I hear you.
And it's funny because, I spend a lot of time with Giles and we write a lot. And he's often completely unaware of everything, of these moments that he's putting. He's like, oh yeah, I remember that. Did I write that? Or they seem to just come very naturally to him.
Sometimes you don't remember this. Sometimes if I listen to, or I can't remember the writing of it. So I don't know. It's weird.
Because sometimes it's only when you go back that you kind of like, oh yeah, this was good. I forgot that I wrote this. Yeah,
it's something happens in the moment, and for me, it's about rhythm. It is about lyricism. And when I'm writing, if it starts to feel like it's got a rhythm to it, then that really turns me on. And if I write a paragraph that feels like that, then I can stand up and walk away and just walk around the room for a bit, and I know I've done something that I'm happy with. Yeah, it has to. Yeah, the sort of the way it's written is so much more important now than what is written to an extent. The story is a story, but I want to try and tell it in a really beautiful way.
But I think what you said was really, really beautiful, because, as you say, like, if you can get the mundane things, the little things that make up most of our lives, to be honest, to make them like that interesting and in a novel or something that you write, that's how a novel or something becomes bigger than just book.
It's human connection. I mean, Charles, he writes characters. This is his other skill, is he writes characters that you feel like you sat with. You know, you feel like, or you could sit with. You know, he said he'd like to go to the pub and sit with Olaf. Well, it's not just down to the voice. It's the fact that Olaf is so vivid that he's a character that you could quite easily imagine yourself sat in the pub with. I mean, it probably wouldn't go well for you. If you did, you'd end up having a fight and people would get killed. But to be able to capture character like that means that you have to understand the range of characters that are out there. You know, the people that are available to you as storytellers kind of color your worlds. And the people that inhabit Giles's worlds as a novelist are all so rich, so easily accessible and funny, unpredictable. You know, they excite you, or quite often they break your heart. You know, he's pretty emotional. I think he writes emotion well.
I think the thing about being sort of reserved in sort of social terms is you become an observer. And as a writer, you have to observe. You just watch people. You're in a room. You're not the loudest person in the room. You know, that's not me. I'm quiet generally, but I'm soaking it all up.
Yeah. I know my wife said that they had this assignment when she was in Oxford. It's an online course, but she was in Oxford for a 2-week period. And one of the assignments they had was to listen in on conversations. Is that something that you do?
Well, naturally, yeah. Like you know, writing is observing.
I don't want to make people wary around you.
Yeah. Well, obviously, I have the power to put you in a book and kill you. I can do that. Yeah.
That's crazy. So you guys worked together for 15 years now, and we talked a lot about like how well you work together and how you complement each other and all that stuff. But how often do you have disagreements during your work?
This is going to be a boring answer because we just don't really.
No, it's really sad. I mean, in a way, we probably should try and find somewhere that we do, but we tend not to. We're both pretty diplomatic. And also, I think we plan pretty methodically whatever we do. And in the planning process, because it's so fluid, there isn't really, I mean, disagreements are kind of an everyday thing, but they're so, you know, rich. It's easy to do. You just go, well, we're going to disagree about this, so which way are we going to go? And you make, they're choices rather than disagreements.
So maybe not spouts, but like, I want to go this way. Yeah, you're probably right. And all that stuff. I get it.
You know, and I think also because we now know each other pretty well, we sometimes second guess before the other person gets there. So it's sort of like, I'm probably, you know, I know he's not going to go with that.
So you don't have any disagreements regarding work. Do you have any other disagreements, like
outside?
Like when you're in the pub? You're like,
I think we're aiming we're aiming at the same thing. So whatever project we're working on, we just want to make it the best we can, and because we're just heading in the same direction with most things, whether it's going to the pub and drinking beers or whether we're trying to write a story together.
Because you know, like in my band, I'm talking a lot about Amon Amarth here in this, but it's kind of funny, like because you work very tightly, and a band touring that is also very tight. And there is one disagreement that follows us to this day, and I'm talking about 20 plus years now, and it comes up every once in a while, and it's a question of which battery is the best buy, the IKEA AA battery or the Duracell AA battery.
That's a fantastic thing.
This is probably the least rock and roll thing I have.
It's insane. It's insanely stupid. It comes up every once in a while, and one camp argues for the IKEA battery, and the other camp argues for the Duracell battery, and they argues which one is the best buy. Where I would say that maybe the argument is which battery is the most value for money.
So with specifics about the argument itself taking place.
Because technically Duracell lasts longer, but the IKEA battery lasts almost as long, but it's way cheaper. So, I mean...
So I think there needs to be some sort of scientific tests that take place.
No, they can't ever know. That's the point of this.
They need a mitigator, but they will never budge in this. And I'm just so tired of hearing it.
But the thing is, when you're in a band, it's kind of you in a way, you against the rest of the world, and we feel the same way because when we're trying to create projects and we're trying to get our films off the ground, and we're meeting with producers and execs, and we have to be united because everyone else is trying. It's very hard to be creative, to be successfully creative and actually make money out of being creative. All those things the world is against you because nobody needs the things that we're trying to sell. No one needs, it's not like we're selling, batteries. I mean, no one needs these stories or these films. So we have to convince them that they do. And it's difficult. Being a creative is difficult.
Yeah. Well, we know that they need them. I mean, the society needs them, the world needs them, for our souls need them. But it is, it's quite difficult to get things right. I think we often do disagree about things, not disagree, but we have a different approach when it comes to kind of putting ourselves out there. I'm often much more likely to be like, oh, well, look, we need to go and speak to these people. We need to go and do this. We need to do a bit of hustling here or whatever it is. And Giles like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm like, come on, man. Come on. I often try and, take him along in things that he often isn't quite as happy to go along to.
Yeah, I'm better at saying no. Yeah, I'll just stay at home, thanks.
But couldn't a bit of tension, at times, actually be good for the creative process?
I don't think so in our case. I think both of us, to be honest, are pretty, we tend to avoid conflict. And I think that's probably the case where I was talking about us second guessing each other. Yeah. I think we probably we tend to try not to put ourselves in a position where we do have any kind of conflict. I think because I'm a bit quite diplomatic in my role as a director, and narrative director in the game. I work with a lot of people all day, every day, and they often have their own conflicts. So I spend a lot of time resolving conflicts. And so I see them coming from quite a long way off, and I see that they're often, it's rare that they have a good purpose. Yeah. Sometimes a bit of conflict can create a healthy artistic dispute that resolves in an exciting way. But from our perspective, because we work as a team, I think we tend to try and avoid them before they happen. This is deep, man.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
maybe we should have an argument.
We didn't argue about whether we should go for another drink last time.
But never argue about that. Of course you can. It's like that.
Why don't we argue?
But if you'd have said, "Do you know what? I'm tired. I'm going to go to my room," I probably would have said, "Yeah, that's a good call." But we didn't. We didn't do that.
It's not even a question. Yeah. So we talked about your where you comes from, research and all that stuff. But what inspires you to do this work? Because obviously there has to be something that drives you guys to.
For me, with the books, it's actually, as I said before, creating something that didn't exist before, and having. Actually, it's a Viking thing. It's legacy. It's leaving something. So we all know that for a Viking, the most important thing he could leave behind after his death was his reputation.
Yes.
So for me, the idea of leaving a body of work behind, leaving books behind when I've gone, and that's something that drives me, definitely drives me. And somebody said to me once, would you still write novels if it was just digital, if you didn't have the physical novel? And because my friend said, yeah, of course, because it's about the story. It's just, I don't care how they're presented or how they're published, as long as they're out there somewhere. And for me, actually, no, I have to have a physical thing to show. It's like, for me, it's a trophy. It's a there it is on the shelf or on the book in the bookstore, and it's a validation for what I've been doing with my time. And I had an email from somebody who's serving on a British submarine, HMS Vengeance. So he's a submariner on there, and that's one of our nuclear deterrent submarines, and it's down there roaming the depths. And he was reading one of my novels, and he said, "I'm leaving it on here when I'm finished. I'm leaving it on there." And I had this weird thought that, okay, what if the world ended in nuclear Armageddon. But somewhere down there in the ocean, this submarine is still cruising around, and my novel is on there. When there's no more civilization, my novel's still there. And that's a bleak thought. Yeah, I get that's pretty bleak, but it's also cool.
I get that too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think my pursuit is a bit of that. I mean, I love the idea that my grandkids can listen to me reading a story that my friend wrote, that I had, a part in creation of. That's very cool. There's something wonderful about that, so that they can hear my voice reading those stories. One of the reasons I do like the medium of audiobook, because it goes back to the skaldic, sitting and just telling your people a story is a fantastic thing. But I think the other thing for me is it's about capturing those moments in human existence that are totally personal. Moments of elation, moments of heartbreak, moments of love. That moment when you look across a room and see someone and have a connection with them. They're all things that we pass by daily, but they're all things that we very rarely recognize properly. We don't, acknowledge them in perhaps the way that we should. And storytelling gives you the opportunity to put those under the magnifying glass, to really capture them. Performance does as well, but I love sculpting stories to make people just stop for a minute and think about themselves.
So you prefer to do that as a director then, rather than an actor, or
both? I mean, they both. You can do the same thing in different ways. So as a director, you're pointing the audience's attention to something. As an actor, you're involving them in the feeling that the character's having. And so, it's part of a different type of orchestration. As a director, you're saying, look at that over there, that thing. Firstly, it's important to the story, so you should take note of it. Yeah. But also, it's important to the tone, the atmosphere, the world that you create. And actually, I think world building is another massive thing. Something that we've been privileged to be able to create worlds, both Giles in novel form and in film, and now in the game. Having those platforms to be able to build a landscape that other people can be part of is a privilege. It's really great.
So what Viking Age story do you guys think deserves or needs to be made into a movie or a TV series?
The other day, I see there's so many, and we've kind of we've touched on a few of them. The Stamford Bridge Viking is always a great one.
It is.
It's a classic. But I was reading the other day about Thorkel the Tall. The mercenary who kind of flipped sides in the early 1000s, in the early 1000s, and would basically just go to wherever the highest bidder was. And I thought there's definitely a kind of cool, like Western style story about this incredibly cool tall dude who everyone was shit scared of, and he could just do whatever he wanted.
It's a bit like the Viking Lee Van Cleef or something.
Yeah, exactly. I like the idea of this guy rolling into a battle and everyone going, "Oh no,
this guy! Fuck, he was fighting with us last week."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I thought you were my friend. And also, there's so many great exploration stories. We've played quite a lot with the idea of doing something about Leif Erikson in the Americas, and just trying to take it in a slightly different route, just by once again tapping into how incredibly brave that would have been.
It's insane
to have gone somewhere that, as far as you were concerned, didn't exist, and then find people
in an open ship.
Find people that were completely unlike anyone you'd ever seen, and then try and settle. Is incredible.
Yeah,
and there's definitely a story to be told there on screen, I think.
So, do you have a favorite story that you would like to see come to life that way?
No.
He makes his own.
I make my own story.
I know. Well, I mean, I do have a favorite story. Well, I actually have a few that I think would be amazing. Some would be probably more difficult than others.
Are you sure you want to tell us?
Sure,
We
sure.
might-
Because I'm not going to do it, but
Okay.
I think
The collaboration coming.
the saga of Egil Skallagrimsson is one of the greatest of the Icelandic sagas, in my opinion, and
unbelievable as well.
And
I mean, they're just like, what?
absolutely unbelievable. Egil as a character, he's such an anti-hero. It's stupid, but he's violent, he's bad-tempered, and he's ugly.
How old was he when he killed his first man?
7.
Yeah.
And oddly enough, the person that he kills is the son of Heg, of Hegstad. So my last name there.
Yeah. Well.
So if you were to do like a story, like who would you cast as the protagonist, like in the Leif Erikson saga, for instance? Like, would you have a favorite actor to cast?
See, this I know that this is an issue that people have faced before. I know that Michael Hirst really, when they first started Vikings, it was a very hard process to find Travis Fimmel, to find their Ragnar. And I think actually it's the kind of thing where there are, the Norsemen was great. Alexander Skarsgård, fantastic Viking. He's brilliant actor and his physique's amazing, and he's got presence and all the things. I think we talked about him quite a long time before that film as well. It was someone who kind of cropped up. But yeah, it's hard. Leading actors are hard to find, and leading actors, good young leading actors are hard because they don't quite have the profile yet, and they might be the next big thing. But the older actors have molded themselves to be, a different thing to certainly a Leif Erikson. That would be
they're often already attached to certain characters.
You want an unknown, really, don't you?
I think that's the thing, is that if we were going to go about casting a Viking film with a young protagonist, it'd be hard to find them. It would, because you'd need to have so much presence,
charisma, is everything.
Charisma to be able to lead a group of people. And I think that goes across the board. If even when it comes to any film where the protagonist is a leader of people, believing that you could walk onto a battlefield and someone could say something and you'd go, okay, I'll die for you. I'll stand next to you until it's time to go. It's a big ask for an actor, definitely.
Yeah. So, but everyone loves a good bad guy, right? So, what would your favorite Viking antagonist? Who would portray the antagonists? Do you think?
Yeah, it's a good point you make. They say that a story is only as good as its antagonist.
Antagonist. It's tough. I mean, it is tough because we do lookbooks or mood boards, and we put things together quite regularly. We tend to struggle finding those people that we're happy to put in because they reference what we're looking for in the character. I mean, going back actually to the Skarsgårds, who have obviously got an incredible dynasty behind them. But when we were doing The Raven, we were looking at Bill Skarsgård as a potential.
That's right.
So yeah, they've obviously got the Viking thing going.
He's an interesting actor because he kind of has that kind of pretty boy face, but he did do like Pennywise. I
think that goes back to what I was talking about it's kind of difficult when you're a younger male actor. People want you to be a thing, but if you're a character actor and that you can do that and play something like that, that's what you should be doing.
Did you see that other Stephen King thing he did? It wasn't Stephen King, but I think it was inspired by Stephen King. It was a TV series, and I forget what it was called now. It took place in Maine anyways, and he kind of played the devil that came into this place. That was...
was it not Salem's Lot, was it?
No. This was... there was so many like Stephen King references in there.
Because Maine is obviously all of his novels are set in Maine.
So it was amazing. Anyways, maybe it'll come to me by the end of this interview.
Maybe this could be your next film appearance.
But it was just such a cool story, I think, and he was such an amazing bad guy in that series, and I think he did a good job. So I think it's a good choice, actually.
Yeah, there's some quirky actors out there.
We always talk about No Country for Old Men as having the best bad guy ever.
Yeah.
Then again, you talked about Gary Oldman as well. Like back in the day, he did some really nasty pieces of work.
Leon.
Yeah, Leon, the crooked cop.
Bring the free one.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyways, this is not why you're here. I'm just kidding. So we already touched a little bit on the game, but let's get a little bit deeper into it.
For sure.
So the game industry is by far today the biggest moneymaker in pop culture.
Yeah.
So currently you're collaborating on like a Arctic Hazard's upcoming Viking game called Norse, Oath of Blood.
Yep.
And it's out in late 2025, like on...
Yeah, late 2025, early 26. Yeah.
It's like PC,
PlayStation,
Xbox,
all of the platforms.
Yeah, that's great. I didn't mean to grace over it now. Sorry about that. But it's great. Like, I love this. But can you tell us about your respective roles in this production and how it came about that you got involved?
It was a few years ago now. The boss of Arctic Hazard, the studio, came to me and he knew about my Viking novels. He knew I'd written 6 Viking novels at that time, and asked if I'd be interested in collaborating on with him on a Viking game and writing the story and the characters and the dialogue and all that sort of stuff. And I hadn't written a Viking novel for a little while. So the idea of getting back on my longship and going raiding again was something that I wasn't going to turn down at all. And so, I said, I'd love to be involved. It'd be amazing. And we started sort of putting the whole thing together. I obviously collaborate with Phil a lot, and Phil knows more about gaming than I ever will. So Phil sort of was helping me out as well at that point. And then being a director, well, you should take over at this point.
Yeah,
they recognize he has other skills, other things to bring to the creation process of the game, and so Phil just jumped aboard as well, and in a big way.
Yeah, so I mean, we as we were working on the scripts, the creative director said, look, do you think you want to step in and actually start looking at working with some of the actors to do the voice lines, that sort of thing? Because, we're writing the dialogue. I said, yeah. And I said, how much are we working in, what environment working in? And we started testing some ideas. And he said, look, man, come in. I think you should lead this narratively. And so I came on board as narrative director. And both of us have worked alongside the devs to kind of go hand in hand with the storytelling process to create a living, breathing Viking world. It's been a great challenge.
Yeah,
brilliant process.
So you already touched about this, but can you elaborate a little bit more on the story of the game?
Yeah, the story is a revenge story, as most Viking stories tend to be.
Sticking with the sagas.
Yeah. If there's not a blood feud in it, what's the point?
Frankly? Then there's it's not a Viking story.
so Jarl Gripa runs his community, and his prow man, his greatest warrior, is Steinar Farspear, and he is an uber Viking. He is the guy you want to be leading the charge. He's at the front of the shield wall, and he's a great warrior. And they're very tight. They're friends. They've grown up together. And as I mentioned earlier, Steinar becomes disenchanted by the route that Jarl Gripa is going. Jarl Gripa has settled now. He's sort of wealthy. He's got a thriving settlement, and he sees his future more in trade than raiding. Steinar doesn't like this. He's a raider. He's a warrior. That's what he's born for. The blood fray. That's his thing. And the game starts with the betrayal of Jarl Gripa by Steinar Farspear.
Yeah, and so it's about the player plays as Jarl Gripa's son, Gunnar Gripson, and the story is about you as a player taking Gunnar, escaping from Bora, where the game starts, and your father is Jarl, getting to safety, you head to Kaupang with where your uncle is Jarl, and he offers you a piece of land and says, "Look, I'm not going to fight this guy. He's too much. But what I can do is I can give you the resources to start your own settlement, grow strong, bring people under your, to your shield. And when you're strong enough, you can go back and take back your birthright." And so Gunnar and his twin sister Sigrid and their old retainer Arn, they go off, and you as a player then start with nothing. You start off with a small farm, and then over the course of the game, you bring craftspeople and warriors and herdmen to your banner, and your settlement grows, and you have to manage that settlement. And as it grows stronger, your warriors grow and become more successful and more powerful. And then,
but it's a turn-based game, right?
Yeah, the combat aspect of it's turn-based. So, I mean, there are other similar sort of games, I suppose, like Baldur's Gate most recently, and XCOM, which is a kind of more sci-fi version of this, where the combat aspect of it is turn-based. So it's almost like a very, very advanced chess, and you have to tactically work out the best warriors for a scenario. You choose your warrior team before you go into a bit of combat, and then you have to adapt using their skills. And so, it's kind of on-the-fly tactical combat that really makes you consider every choice you make and every piece of environment you come across.
Talking of XCOM, somebody coined this AXCOM, which we rather like.
It's kind of cool.
So what was what's the biggest difference writing and directing a game compared to like a novel or a movie or TV or?
Yeah, it's been a very steep learning curve. Only because, in a way, one of the things about filmmaking or even writing a novel or a script is that the restrictions are sort of what helps mold your skill. Your restrictions point you in the right direction. And you guys, I can't do that because of, they wouldn't go, they wouldn't do this. Or if you're on a film set, it's like, well, I can't film that direction because the sun's in the wrong place, or there's that mountain over there. But in computer games, you go, well, move the sun. Let's take the mountain away. And so that level of freedom has been quite interestingly challenging. But also from us as storytellers, it's making the mediums collide. You're taking something that you have agency over as a storyteller, and you're giving the agency to a player, and so that they feel that they are the ones that are developing the story. They're the protagonist. And so that giving a player that flexibility is quite hard work as storytellers, because you have to second guess how the player will react to something, where they might go, how they might try to experience something, whether they find that bit of information or not, whether they go to that place and see that thing or not. And so the choices and eventualities are so vast that it can be dizzying from a storytelling perspective.
Although it can be the other way as well. So in a novel, I can put anything I like in it, but now if I have to ask the devs if I can have a wolf in it. You know what I mean? It's like, can I have a wolf in this game? Okay, I can. So then I can write it into the story.
Yeah. But like you mentioned before, Baldur's Gate, which I think is a great example, a great game. I loved playing it back in the day. But writing for a game like that with so many multiple options of where you go, because as I understand it, that's kind of what this game is as well. Depending on what your choice is here, it may develop in a different way. Is that a big challenge?
Yeah, I mean, in this game there is a linear path. It's been useful to us, but it is a narrative game. So there is a beginning, middle, and end. You take those steps, but within the narrative structure, there are multitude of different choices you can make. And yes, that can become really challenging when you have to think, okay, well, if they do that there, then and they have to get there, how many options do we have that we have to explore along the way?
So how's that coming up with the story for that?
Yeah, it's again, it's you have to fulfill certain criteria. So we need a blacksmith in the village. Yeah, we need a shipbuilder. We need a seamstress. There are certain sort of VIP characters that have to be in this game. But then it's how do we get them in the game without just that you're just wandering along and there's a guy, hey, I'm a shipbuilder. Can I? Oh, are you a shipbuilder? Come and live with us then. It can get pretty tedious if that's the way you're introducing all these major characters. So it's the most fun has been actually trying to create characters who really live and breathe and who have very distinct personalities, and characters who you actually become rather fond of. Like we mentioned Torsten, the blacksmith, and he's just somebody who, he's a big, brash guy, but he's got a real soft heart. You know that he's actually, his backstory is sort of heartbreaking. These characters are great fun to write.
But now I'm getting into details, because I'm thinking, isn't it as a writer, like if you think about it, like you write the story and you may have like your favorite character, Torsten. Maybe he doesn't get the prominent position in the game when someone's playing, because they're playing differently, so they may not encounter him and learn about him as a character.
One of the most painful things in the game for us is that, and this is, it's common across all gaming, is that you can just skip. You skip, I spend a long time crafting cutscenes with, scores of actors and, cinematographer, and we spend a long time molding them and making them beautiful. And a lot of players will just go, skip.
Yeah.
Let's get back to the gameplay. And that can be quite...
And there might be important information in those cutscenes. So then we have to make sure the information still gets to the player, but in a different way, in case they skip the cutscene.
Yeah. But at the same time, doesn't feel repetitive to the people who did sit and watch the cutscene, which, it's challenging.
That could be, I can see that. But like, have you learned about the Viking Age? Have you learned anything new about the Viking Age during the process of this production?
Absolutely, yeah.
What have we learned about the Viking Age?
Well, I've learned a lot of things that you shouldn't put in the Viking Age. That's been a big thing.
There are no more potatoes in this game.
We have,
Okay.
Yeah, we've, because we work with such a wide team and a global team as well, we sometimes have to be the arbiters of accuracy as much as you can be, because, it is a computer game and it has to be fun and it has to serve the player rather than the historian.
So for example, we get questions from potential players about what's the kit like, what's the war gear, what are the weapons and stuff like that. And we've set the game in AD 802. But we haven't put everybody in with weapons and equipment from exactly the same time. We've taken a spread of the Viking Age. So you might have the famous Yemend boot helmet with the spectacles. I think it's still the only surviving complete helmet found.
Probably, yes.
But of course and that's from the early Viking, we've put that in there, but we've also got the Spangon helm nasal, the traditional helmet that was used right up to the Norman invasion and beyond. Because the player will want to have variants on their weapons and armor and upgrades. So in terms of historical accuracy, some nerd might say, well, those helmets weren't being used at the same time. We are aware of that. But they are Viking. They're both sort of Viking kind of age helmets. So we've taken a spread of the whole Viking Age.
We've been very careful as well. We've really tried to say, look, we're not trying to make a historically accurate game. We're trying to make a historically inspired game.
Immersive,
and something that hopefully gives the player a really good window into the mentality, to the type of life and world that these people would be living in. And at the same time, it's a fun game. We first and foremost, it's a computer game, and it should be great fun to play.
Yeah, because I can imagine that some people, first of all, don't really know much about history or care.
Okay.
And most people who know about history and care about it, they still want to have an entertaining product.
Yeah, I think most people are forgiving of it.
Yeah.
I think it's a very, very small amount of people that will give you grief for making those choices.
Exactly.
They are very much out there and
usually very loud.
And very loud
yes.
about those choices.
Yeah.
But I think some of the things we've learned really has been about, we have a very focused approach to storytelling when we're making a film or writing a book. We're telling a person's story. And in this, it's about world building. And our worlds are they're not secondary, but they're also, we don't make a big thing of the worlds. They're just there. They're part of a place our characters exist in. Whereas in this game, part of the game is experiencing the world and seeing what it's like to exist in that world in different places with different environments. So you have to consider everything that you could could look away from as a writer or a director. If it's snowing, how does the snow rest on the top of a roof that's got a certain type of fire in it? How does someone actually sit down on that type of chair if that's the chair you've chosen for your long haul or whatever? There's so many choices involved that I think it's been a learning curve for us to go, okay, we have to be completely open to anything that a player might decide to do and get there before the player does. Make the decisions before they do. I mean, we've got an incredible development team. The team we work with are craftspeople of the highest order. And actually the world that we have created, it's sort of, in a way it's wasted, because I could spend all day walking, zooming in the dev world and actually just going into every little nook and cranny. You can go down to the seeing the weave on a piece of rope on a harbor, or the woodwork, or it's so rich. And our world design team and our art team have gone above and beyond to sculpt and to craft and to create little intricate things that most players will probably just pass by, and they're just part of the fabric.
But isn't that like also with like filming in general? I mean, in a book, you read the book, you don't skip the lines, but in a film, you may painstakingly make a shot that lasts for about 5 seconds, and most people will only see the actor, not the stuff behind them.
That's true. That is true. I mean, I think I suppose the difference is that with a game, with a film, that's your frame, and and everything in your frame you can dress and prepare and make right, and make the actor the most prominent thing in it at the same time as complementing everything else in the frame. In a game, you can go over there as well, and go over there as well, and the freedom means that there's nowhere to hide as creatives.
We've had some wonderful actors come and record the mocap stuff. It's been a real pleasure to sort of be surrounded with talented people bringing these characters to life. And really, we've had 2 leads, Gunnar and Sigrid, actually in tears in their eyes as they're acting out some of these scenes, which when you're in a mocap suit, you're in a studio with kind of equipment everywhere, to be able to still immerse themselves so deeply within the roles that they're playing is very cool.
It is. I mean, that's one of the interesting parts of the process, sort of to juxtapose the directing and the writing that we do. Directorially, it's very strange to put actors in a space. They perform their parts, and then you put them in costume, and then you put them in an environment, and then quite often you change their face. You take their face off and put someone else's face on, or you're like, well, actually, what they're wearing is completely wrong. Let's change it completely. Or they're standing in the wrong direction. Let's turn them. That level of control is really exciting, because you really can craft and mold. But it's definitely a process that challenges the performers when they're doing those scenes, because everything has to be in their imagination. They haven't got the the prop department to lean on and the things around them.
So once you've been a part of creating a game like this, and you've been so deeply involved in it, do you think it's going to be possible to enjoy playing the game as well?
It's funny, actually. Like for a good while, we test the game all the time. We test on a daily basis often, and I try to give myself a bit of space between doing big runs, because also it's a big game. There isn't enough hours in the day to play the whole thing over and over and over and over and over and over again. But just a couple of days ago, there's been so many kind of quick changes. We're coming up to sort of the end of the release. We're getting there now. Everything's falling into place nicely. And I played a section of the game the other day, and it was the first time in a long time that I played it and kind of forgot that I'd been involved in making it. I was just kind of enjoying playing, because I'm a gamer, and I suppose the fear was that I could never enjoy it.
Would you do you rewatch your movies, for instance?
I tend not to. No, actually, I give myself a lot of time and space after.
Do you reread your books?
No, the closest I get is when Phil records the audiobook. And usually that's a little bit after, so then I can come back a bit fresh, and then I forget some of the scenes when I hear him doing. I don't sit there for the 5 days that he's in there. I usually come at the end, like when he's doing the last few pages.
Okay,
I like to sit there and watch him do the last few pages. He gets emotional. I like to see that,
because I feel like as like maybe you have a similar reference actually, as well as being a musician yourself, but when you've recorded a song and you tend to listen to it over and over again, and then poof, nothing. And then maybe for some reason it comes on Spotify or whatever, and you're like, oh yeah, this
seems pretty good.
It's pretty good. So is that a feeling that you get when you listen to him reading your books?
Yeah, very much so, because when he does it, because it's a different format, it's a different medium, and I think you take something new from that. So, of course, when I'm writing the characters, I haven't got the voices in my head that until I hear him give them voices, they don't have those voices. So it becomes something different. When it's an audiobook, it becomes something different again.
Yeah.
So, and if I'm doing a sequel to a book I've already written, then it's a great way of immersing myself in the world again and getting to know the characters again. I'll listen to Phil's audiobook to remind myself of who everybody is and what's going on.
That's a problem for me, though, because I have to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's nothing more narcissistic than driving around, listening to yourself, telling yourself a story. You know, the worst one I found was when we did Lancelot, and I was listening to Lancelot. It's a very emotionally charged novel. And I got to the end and I was crying to myself, listening to myself. And as I was doing it, I was thinking, this is the most narcissistic thing I've ever done. Like, I've made myself so emotional with the delivery. I'm crying. Wow.
I mean, I guess also as a musician, it's different because you kind of have to go back and listen to your stuff when you rehearse.
Yeah.
So that's
do you find you lose objectivity, though? Do you get...
No.
No, see, because that's difficult from when you... Certainly with edits of stuff, with film, you know, you watch an edit so many times, you're like, I don't know.
Well, yeah, I do lose the objectivity during recording or writing. And that's why we need a producer, which we talked about earlier, because they can come in and say, well, this bit doesn't really work, does it?
Yeah.
But I love this line. Yeah, but it doesn't work. Rewrite it. Oh, damn it. You know?
Yeah.
It happens all the time. But going back and listening to stuff, it's rather that I can be very critical and go like, should have done something different there, or should have cut this bit out, or redid this.
And if there's ever the slightest doubt, you have to do it, because otherwise it haunts you forever.
Yeah.
Ever.
It's true.
And that's terrible.
Yeah. Anyways, really looking forward to this game. It's going to be so fascinating to try it out. I'm really.
No, thank you. It's been a pleasure to be part of it, and it's been a great thing to try to tackle the Viking world in a different medium, you know, and to give players the opportunity to experience a Viking world in a different way.
Yeah. So it's out late 2025. Do you have a specific date yet?
No, it's late 25, early 26. It's still in debate at the moment, but yeah, it's coming soon.
Yeah. All right.
The Vikings are coming again.
Again. Awesome. So speaking of that, or actually kind of going into one of my favorite parts of when we have our guests, it's our little questions that we usually put at the end of the show. So these, normally it's only one person here, so now you both have to answer these questions. But the first question is, if you could be a fly on the wall anywhere during the Viking Age, what would you like to see?
The Battle of Stamford Bridge.
The Battle of Stamford Bridge.
I was going to say probably, I think the Battle of Hastings, because it's so iconic in the UK. You know that. I know it's, you know, it's Norman and Saxon, but there were Vikings on that field.
Were Vikings.
Yeah, exactly. And the Normans were Vikings. Yeah. But you know, there were those Vikings from Stamford Bridge that decided to hook up with the Saxons and go, do you know what? Let's just we'll fight with you guys. But yeah, I think that would have been. There's so much conjecture over that.
Good choices, I think, because pivotal moments in British history as well. Yeah. So wow. Good answers. And now the mother of all questions. Would you have liked to live during the Viking Age?
if I could get over the itchy clothing. I'm sensitive skin. So like if the wool is not, if it's itchy, forget it.
Yeah.
But everything else, the pillaging, the fighting, bring it on, but not the itchy clothing.
You're a dirty heathen then. Your mother was right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I think the thing that would get me is probably healthcare. Like,
You could
medicine.
splinter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Toothache, those sorts of things that the thing, some of the cures were pretty brutal. But all other things, I'd love to have maybe spend a few weeks rather than pull.
I'm not sure, to be honest, like if I was magically transported back into the Viking Age, I'm not sure how a modern person would actually survive more than a couple of days.
I don't think they would. Yeah. I really don't.
The life would so hard.
So hard.
That's such a different mentality, such a different way of life that what we know. But on the other hand, if you were born back then, you wouldn't know anything else. So
yeah, you can get used to anything in a fortnight.
Yeah, exactly. Anyways, it's been great having you guys here.
It's been a real pleasure.
Looking forward to the game. Norse, Oath of Blood, out 2025 or early 2026.
Yeah, fantastic.
Great to have you guys.
It's been a great pleasure. Thank you.
What a joy. Thanks.
Yes, thanks for coming. Hey guys, if you enjoyed this episode, check out our other episodes on our YouTube channel, Spotify, and other podcast streaming services. And also, subscribe to support our work. Thanks for listening.